The morning of my son's wedding arrived with the kind of soft, pearly sunrise that usually promises a peaceful day. The air smelled faintly of early spring fresh grass, warm earth, and blooming cherry blossoms from the tree Jonathan and I planted 30 years ago. I touched one of its low, hanging branches as I stepped outside. "Jonathan," I whispered, "our boy's getting married today." For a moment I allowed myself to imagine him standing beside me, tall, warm, smiling that quiet smile that made me fall in love with him. He would have been so proud of Daniel. Then the ache settled back into its familiar place in my chest. I took a deep breath, squared my shoulders, and carried the bouquet of soft pink roses I'd prepared for my soon-to-be daughter-in-law. Despite the tension I'd sensed over the last few months, little comments Alyssa made, the way she subtly belittled my traditions, I hoped today would change things. I wanted to love her. I wanted her to love us. I wanted my son's new life to begin with joy, but fate doesn't bend itself to hope. The community hall was buzzing when I arrived. It wasn't extravagant. Daniel had insisted on something simple and meaningful, but it was decorated beautifully. Lavender drapes, white lanterns, and garlands Daniel and I had made together the night before hung from the beams. I'd watched him laugh more that night than in the past 6 months. I thought it was love. I thought it was excitement. But now I wonder if it was relief. I found him standing near the window, adjusting his tie in the reflection of the glass. My baby boy, now a grown man, tall and handsome with Jonathan's jawline and my eyes. "Mom," he said when he saw me, the corners of his eyes crinkling. "You made it," as if I'd be anywhere else. I smiled, straightening the crooked knot. "You look nervous." "I am," he admitted. But in a good way. I wanted to believe him. I squeezed his hand. "Everything will be perfect." But the moment Alyssa entered the hall, dressed in an elaborate gown of pearls and glittering stones, I felt the subtle shift in the air. A coldness slipped between the warm chatter. Her family swept in behind her like a wave of perfume and judgment, scanning the decorations with lifted chins and thin smiles. Alyssa walked toward us with the poise of someone walking toward a stage rather than a marriage. She didn't greet me. Her eyes flicked to the bouquet I held, and her lips curled slightly. "Oh," she said, "those are cute." Daniel frowned. "Alyssa, Mom made those herself." She didn't respond. Instead, she lifted her chin and addressed the whole room. "Excuse me, I'd like to make an announcement before the ceremony." A hush fell over the guests. I felt my pulse quicken. Daniel's brows knitted. "Alyssa, what are you?" She held up a hand, silencing him. "I want to speak about something important. Daniel and I are starting a family, and to start a family, we need a proper home." A few guests nodded politely, unsure what she was getting at. Alyssa smiled, but there was a sharpness to it, like a blade hidden behind a flower. "Daniel grew up in his mother's house, a beautiful home, spacious, perfect for us. And since Margaret is getting older, we think it's best if she moves into a smaller place and lets us have the house." My breath left my chest. The room went utterly silent. I heard nothing but the faint buzzing of the overhead lights. "I beg your pardon," I managed. "It's not that complicated." Alyssa said with a shrug, "A young family needs the house more than someone who's alone." Every word was coated in condescension. I tried to stay calm. "Alyssa, that house is—" "It's too big for you," she said, waving her hand dismissively. "And Daniel promised me—" "No, I didn't." Daniel cut in, voice suddenly firm. "I told you we could talk about living arrangements later. I never agreed to this." She glared at him. "You said you'd take care of it." "I didn't mean forcing my mother." "Oh, please." Alyssa laughed sharply. "Margaret, don't make this dramatic. Just sign the papers after the ceremony, and we're good." A ripple of shock moved through the room. I felt my cheeks burn with humiliation, but I stood straight. "No," I said quietly. Alyssa blinked. "What?" I said. "No." She stared at me as if I had personally offended the universe. Then, before anyone could react, she raised her hand and slapped me **. The sound echoed gasps, a dropped glass, a woman's muffled scream. Daniel froze, horror etched across his face. I didn't raise a hand to my cheek. I didn't give her the satisfaction. I simply looked at her with the calmness of a mother who has survived things far worse than a spoiled girl's tantrum. "Very well," I said, my voice dangerously soft. I walked away, past the stunned guests, past Daniel calling after me, past Alyssa's triumphant smirk, though it faltered the moment she saw my phone in my hand. Outside the hall, I dialed a number I had kept for years. A number I hoped I would never need again. A deep voice answered instantly. "It's time," I said. "We'll be there in 20 minutes," he replied. I hung up, and when I stepped back into the hall, 2 tall men in black suits followed behind me with the heavy, silent confidence of people who end problems without raising their voices. Alyssa's smirk vanished. Her face turned white. And then she did the one thing she hadn't done all morning. She started crying. The moment the 2 men in black suits entered the hall, the entire wedding party fell into an uneasy silence. Their polished shoes clicked against the marble floor with a steady rhythm, slow, deliberate, and heavy with authority. Guests shifted in their seats, some straightening their backs, others whispering behind gloved hands. Alyssa stiffened like prey spotting a predator. She pulled away from Daniel, mascara already streaking her cheeks, and pointed at the men with a trembling hand. Why are they here? She choked, because she recognized them. She knew exactly what their presence meant. She just never imagined they would show up for her **. Daniel glanced at me, confusion written all over his face. "Mom, what's going on?" I didn't answer him yet. Not here. Not with Alyssa's hysteria bubbling under the surface. Instead, I turned to the 2 men, Alan, Gregory. They nodded in perfect sync. "Mrs. Whitford," Alan said, his voice deep and respectful. As requested, we brought the full file. Alyssa made a strangled sound. This is a wedding. You can't just walk in here like professionals." Gregory finished, raising a brow. I gestured toward the side room, where bridal parties usually prepared before ceremonies. "Let's speak privately." "No," Alyssa snapped, yanking her arm away from Daniel. "No secrets. She's trying to humiliate me. Everyone should hear this." I studied her face. Beneath the tear tracks and smeared foundation, she looked terrified. Terrified because she knew the truth was no longer something she could twist. "Very well," I said calmly. "If you want the truth publicly, we'll discuss it publicly." She froze, but she didn't take it back. So I stepped forward, standing tall in front of the guests, and exhaled slowly, letting the weight of the last 10 years settle into my bones. "This house," I began, "the one you demanded I give you, is not simply a house." Alyssa crossed her arms tightly over her chest, but her lower lip quivered. "You're overreacting." "No," I said quietly. "You are underestimating what this home means." I turned to the hall full of faces, friends, neighbors, distant relatives, people who had known me through joy and grief, who had whispered kind condolences when Jonathan died, who had watched me raise Daniel with trembling strength. "You all know," I continued, "that Jonathan's death changed everything for us. But what you don't know is that before he passed, he made sure Daniel and I would always have a safe place." I nodded at Gregory, who opened a leather folder with careful hands. "My husband created something called the Whitford Living Trust. He did it to protect the home we built together, the home where Daniel took his first steps, where he learned to ride a bike in the driveway, where we had birthdays, holidays, and heartbreaks." I swallowed hard, the memories flooding in too sharply. "He did it," I continued, voice steadier now, "because he worried that one day someone might try to pressure or manipulate the family, someone unkind." Alyssa's eyes darted toward the exit. But Gregory spoke before she could move. "The trust states clearly." He said, his lawyer's cadence crisp and unwavering, that the property cannot be transferred, sold, or inhabited by anyone outside the immediate family unless all three trustees agree. 3. Someone murmured from the audience, "Yes," I said, "my signature, one trustee's signature, and Daniel's." Alyssa's breath caught audibly. "So even if Daniel wanted," Gregory continued, "and even if Mrs. Whitford wanted, it still requires one more signature, which means it's impossible," she whispered. I looked right at her, precisely. Her eyes widened, filling with terror. "You knew all this already," I said softly. She jerked back. "Aye. What are you talking about?" "You snooped. You went through my office drawers when I invited you for tea. You read Jonathan's will when you pretended you were looking for tissues. You overheard Daniel and me talk about trust once and pretended you didn't. The room buzzed with whispers. I didn't. You can't prove. Alyssa," Daniel said quietly, "is that true?" She threw her hands up. "Why are we even talking about this? It's not a big deal. Just a house. It's my life asterisk," I said sharply. "It's your fiancé's childhood, and you treated it like a prize to be grabbed." Alyssa's chest heaved, but I wasn't done. I turned back to Alan. "Show her the second file." Alyssa blanched. No, please," but it was too late. Alan opened the second folder and slid a crisp, neatly prepared document onto the table in front of the stage. The guests craned their necks. Daniel stepped closer for a better look. Then he froze. "A prenuptial agreement," he whispered. Alyssa's knees buckled. "You told me," Daniel continued, voice cracking. "You told me we didn't need one, that prenups were for people who didn't trust each other. You said they were ugly and unromantic." Alyssa's tears fell faster. Daniel, I didn't want one because I love you. No," I said gently. "You didn't want one because you wanted the house." She shook her head desperately. No, I swear that's not." Alan lifted yet another paper. "And the loan?" he asked. "The one you took out using Daniel's name, without his permission." A sharp collective inhale filled the room. Daniel's face twisted in shock. "What loan?" Alyssa collapsed into a chair, sobbing uncontrollably. I was going to pay it back. I just needed money. My parents cut me off. She had no mask left, just raw desperation. But I had no sympathy. "You should have come to us," Daniel said, voice trembling. "You should have told me, not forged my signature, not lied." She reached for him, but he stepped back. My heart ached for my son, not because he was angry, but because betrayal had carved its first real mark across his face. I placed a hand gently on his shoulder. "We'll get through this," I whispered. He swallowed hard. "Alyssa," he said quietly, "I don't know who you are anymore." She let out a broken sob. But the truth was finally laid bare. The girl who slapped me wasn't confident. She was terrified. Terrified of losing control. Terrified of losing the home she thought she could steal. Terrified of losing the man she pretended to love. And now she was about to lose everything. A hush settled over the hall so thick it felt like fog. No one moved. No one even breathed. The truth had been pulled into the light and was now sitting there, ugly and undeniable, between Daniel and Alyssa like a cracked mirror reflecting everything broken between them. Alyssa sat hunched in the nearest chair, trembling, makeup streaking her cheeks like cracked porcelain. The girl who had strutted into this hall dripping with pearls and arrogance now looked small, frightened in a way that no cruelty could hide. Daniel stood a few feet away, his hands shaking, the prenuptial papers clutched loosely between them. His expression wasn't just anger, it was heartbreak, wrapped in disbelief. I wanted to reach out to him, but I knew this was a storm he needed to face himself. Alan, ever calm and professional, began placing documents neatly in a line on the table. "Before we continue," he said, "I want to clarify something important." Alyssa lifted her head with difficulty. Her eyes darted wildly between the papers, the lawyers, and Daniel searching for a lifeline that no longer existed. Alan continued, "These financial discrepancies, your credit card debts, the forged signatures, The loan taken in Daniel's name, they weren't minor mistakes. They were deliberate acts of fraud. A soft gasp rippled through the crowd. No. Please. Alyssa sobbed, curling inward. Don't say it like that. I was desperate. I just needed time. I didn't think. That much is clear. Gregory said, voice cool as marble, and the attempt to coerce a family member into surrendering a protected asset. Alan added, nodding toward me. That falls under civil pressure, possibly even duress, especially since you publicly demanded the house and physically assaulted Mrs. Whitford. Some guests shifted uncomfortably. Others stared at Alyssa with wide eyes, as if they had never seen her before now. Daniel's voice, when it finally rose, was barely above a whisper. You slapped my mother. He said it not as accusation, but as realization, like he was piecing together something monstrous that had been hiding behind every sweet smile Alyssa had given him. Alyssa crawled to her knees. No, Daniel, no. You don't understand. She was manipulating you. She was trying to take you away from me. She never liked me. I met her desperate eyes without flinching. I welcomed you. I said softly. I offered you tea. I bought you gifts. I tried, and every time I tried, you saw it as weakness. Her lips trembled as if the words cut deeper than the slap ever could. Daniel took a long, shuddering breath. Mom never tried to take me from you. She stayed silent even when she was uncomfortable. You're the one who kept pushing. At me, at her, at everything. He looked at the documents again, the evidence, the lies, the trail of manipulation. Did you ever love me? He asked. Alyssa lunged toward him, grabbing his hands with clawed desperation. Yes, yes, I love you. I only did those things because I wanted a future with you. A future we could afford. I didn't want to end up like my parents, constantly fighting about money. But you lied? He whispered. Her whole body sagged. You lied? He repeated, louder this time. And you hurt my mother? You humiliated her? You humiliated me? The tension in the hall wound tighter and tighter, like everyone was bracing for something to snap. Then Alan cleared his throat. Mr. Whitford? He said gently, based on the trust terms and the current state of affairs, I recommend postponing or canceling the ceremony until legal matters are addressed. Proceeding with the wedding today would expose you to significant financial risk. Alyssa's scream tore through the hall. No, you can't cancel. You can't do that. I paid for the decorations. I told everyone. We sent out invitations. My whole family is here. Her mother stepped forward, face ashen. Her father looked like he wanted to disappear. Daniel's next words were quiet, but they rang louder than her screams. The wedding is canceled. The room seemed to tilt. Alyssa collapsed, clutching her dress like it was the only thing keeping her from falling apart completely. No, she sobbed. You don't mean that. You're just angry. You'll forgive me. You always forgive me. Daniel shook his head. Not this time. Something inside her snapped. She lifted her head with a wild, furious glare. This is her fault. She shrieked, pointing at me with shaking fingers. She poisoned you against me. She hates me because I'm younger, because I'm prettier, because she knows you'd pick me over her. Daniel's voice dropped to a cold silence. I'm not choosing between you and my mother, he said. My mother never made me choose. You did. Her face crumpled at the edges. I finally stepped forward, not with anger, not with triumph, but with something sadder, heavier. Alyssa. I said softly, I don't hate you. I pity you. You had a chance to become part of this family. A real family, built on trust, not power, on partnership, not manipulation. But you couldn't see that. She looked at me with such desperation I almost felt sorry, almost sweetheart. I added quietly, love built on lies can't survive. A hush followed. Then Alan gathered the papers into a stack. Mrs. Whitford, he said, will deliver the follow-up documents to your home this evening. Thank you. Gregory nodded. Daniel, we'll need your signature later, but for now take your time. The lawyers bowed respectfully and left the hall with the same authoritative calm they had entered with. Left behind was a girl in a wedding dress sobbing on the floor. Left behind was the echo of choices she couldn't undo. Daniel walked to me slowly, as if the weight of the world had settled onto his shoulders. "Mom," he whispered, voice trembling. "I'm so sorry." I wrapped my arms around him the way I had when he was a child frightened by thunderstorms. "It's not your fault," I murmured into his hair. "None of this is your fault." He held onto me as though he were trying not to drown. And behind us, Alyssa's sobs filled the hall. But for once they had no power. For once they could not control the room. For once justice was quiet, clean, and final. Sweet revenge didn't need shouting. It just needed truth. And today the truth won. The echoes of Alyssa's sobs trailed through the hall long after the lawyers had left. Long after guests had started to slip quietly out the side doors, murmuring apologies and condolences. They weren't sure who to give. The one celebratory room, adorned with lilac drapes and lanterns glowing softly, felt hollow now, as if the decorations themselves understood the wedding would never happen. Daniel stood beside me, trying to steady his breathing. His face had lost all color. He looked like a man who had seen the future he built collapse in a single afternoon. And yet, I could see relief flickering behind the devastation. A weight lifted. A truth finally faced. I gently squeezed his arm. "You did the right thing," I said softly. He swallowed hard. "It doesn't feel like it." Before I could answer, a piercing wail broke across the hall. Alyssa had pushed herself off the floor and was stumbling toward us, her gown dragging like a wounded animal's tail behind her. Her mascara streaks, smudged lipstick, and trembling hands made her look almost unrecognizable. "Daniel, Daniel, please," she cried. "Don't do this. I can fix it. I'll pay everything back. I'll apologize to your mother. I'll sign anything, just. Don't leave me." Her voice shattered with every word. Guests nearby stared with pity or discomfort. Daniel turned toward her but didn't move closer. "Alyssa," he said quietly, "you didn't just make a mistake. You broke something. You lied to me. You tried to take advantage of my mother, and you thought I wouldn't find out. I was scared," she cried. "I was so scared you'd leave if you saw how much debt I had. I thought if we lived in that house, everything would be okay. I thought. You thought you could force my mother out of her home." His voice hardened. "My childhood home." She shook her head frantically. "No, it wasn't like that. You slapped her." Her mouth fell open, but no sound came. For a moment the hall went still again. The truth was too big, too fresh, too impossible to deny. Alyssa looked around as if hoping someone, anyone, would save her, defend her, give her an escape route. But no one spoke. Finally she turned her tear-streaked face toward me. "You're happy now, aren't you?" she hissed, bitterness twisting her voice. "You wanted this. You wanted him to hate me. You wanted to break us up. You couldn't handle that someone else would be more important to him." I shook my head slowly. "No," I said gently, "I never wanted to break you up. I wanted you to join the family, not destroy it." She blinked at me through tears, stunned. "You could have had everything," I said softly. "A husband who loved you, a home full of warmth, a mother-in-law who was eager, truly eager, to welcome you." Alyssa's lip trembled. "All you had to do," I continued, "was treat us with kindness. But you saw kindness as weakness. You saw openness as an opportunity to take. You wanted the benefits of family without giving anything in return." "I didn't mean," she whispered. "You meant every action." I said, "even if you didn't mean the consequences." She bit her lip until it bled. I stepped forward, not close enough for her to touch me, but close enough to look her straight in the eyes. "You slapped me," I said, "but worse than that, you tried to humiliate me publicly so you could take something sacred. You wanted my son to believe I was selfish, that I was standing in the way." Her knees wobbled. "You played on his guilt," I added softly, "and that is a cruelty I cannot forgive." Alyssa covered her face and sobbed. "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." Her parents rushed forward, finally finding the courage to intervene. Her mother knelt beside her, whispering frantic comforts. Her father looked at Daniel with a mixture of shame and apology. We're sorry," he said stiffly, "for everything." Daniel nodded, but didn't speak. Slowly, gently, Alyssa's parents helped her to her feet. She looked at Daniel one last time, her eyes full of regret, fury, longing, and a grief she had brought upon herself. "You ruined my life," she whispered to him. Daniel closed his eyes. "No," he said quietly. "You ruined what we could have had." Alyssa crumpled inward like the words were knives. Her parents guided her toward the exit. She stumbled, sobbing the whole way. And just before the doors closed behind her, she cast one last look at me, a look filled not with hatred, but with the hollow recognition of someone facing the truth for the first time. The doors shut. Silence returned. Daniel leaned heavily against a chair, breathing shakily. I put a hand on his back, steady and warm, and he let out a trembling sigh. "It's over," I whispered. "It feels like a nightmare," he murmured, "but you woke up," I said softly. "And that is the hardest part." He nodded slowly, then looked at me with a raw vulnerability that reminded me of when he was young. "Mom, would Dad have been disappointed in me?" he asked. I felt my own throat tighten. "No," I said firmly. "He would be proud that you stood up for what was right, proud that you protected your family, proud that you saw the truth even when it hurt." Daniel's eyes watered. "I'm so glad you're here," he whispered. "I'll always be here," I said, pulling him into my arms. He pressed his forehead against my shoulder, finally letting the last of the tension break. We stayed like that until the guests left, until the decorations dimmed, until the hall felt like nothing more than an empty shell of a dream that had never been meant to come true. When we finally stepped outside, the late afternoon sun warmed us. The breeze carried the scent of cherry blossoms, the ones blooming outside our house, waiting for us. "Let's go home," Daniel said softly. "Yes," I whispered, "home." We walked toward the car together, mother and son, stronger than we had been that morning. Behind us, the hall stood silent. Ahead, the house still waited untouched, protected, filled with memories that were ours and ours alone. Alyssa had tried to take everything, but in the end, she had only taught us how strong we truly were. Together,